Globally, this is already one of the most successful films of 2014, but will anyone bother to see it here in the United States? You're watching Beyond the Trailers review of The Wind Rises. To date, The Wind Rises has made over $112 million worldwide, putting it smack in between Jack Ryan and Ride Along as the most successful films of the new year. I know, interesting list. But while plenty of Americans have seen Ride Along and some Jack Ryan, it is unlikely that many will see The Wind Rises, which has earned almost all of its money in its native Japan. This is the way it always is with Hayao Miyazaki films, which consistently earn almost all of their money in Japan. Interestingly, the most successful Miyazaki film here in the US is the most recent release, Ponyo, rather than perhaps the best-known Princess Mononoke. Yet still, Disney continues to distribute them domestically via a deal made in 1996. Princess Mononoke was the first film to be released as a part of that deal, and while Miyazaki's films have failed to take hold at the box office, his relationship with Disney has certainly put him on the American pop culture radar. Yes, it never hurts to be a global brand. But these days, Miyazaki's ties with Disney run even deeper, as the current head of his own animation house, Studio Ghibli, is the former president of Walt Disney Japan. So is The Wind Rises just more of the same, another hit animated film to be ignored by America? Well, not quite. At first, The Wind Rises garnered quite a bit of attention because Miyazaki said it would be his last film. Yet apparently he's teased retirement before. Seems he's not just the Japanese Walt Disney, but also the Japanese Steven Soderbergh. However, beyond that, The Wind Rises is perhaps Miyazaki's most sophisticated film yet. It's a fictional work, but at the heart of it is a real person, Jiro Horikoshi, the designer of two types of aircraft used prominently in World War II by Japan. Now, of course, aerial warfare was a huge part of World War II, especially for Japan, and Miyazaki explores the toll that has taken on the country in various ways. In fact, Miyazaki struck a nerve back home with this film, angering almost every political faction. He's also caught the attention of a number of critics here in the United States, and The Wind Rises is Frozen's chief competition for the Best Animated Feature Oscar. Finally, though, The Wind Rises underlines how differently animation is perceived by its two biggest audiences, Japan and the United States. But there are signs the gap is closing with increasingly sophisticated work from Pixar and, incredibly, the Lego Movie. Plus, Disney's Big Hero 6 is on the horizon, featuring a strong Eastern influence. So maybe it is time for us to discover Miyazaki's work here at large. What a charming film! For 2 hours, I was wrapped in a warm blanket of Miyazaki's talent, and I almost fell asleep a few times, not because I was bored, but because it was that cozy. And I really, one thought that really occurred to me while I was watching the film is I hope that Disney does not give up on 2D animation, or at least moves forward with this hybrid technology they created for Paperman, because there is an undeniable warmth and this storybook brought to life quality that hand-drawn animation has that computer animation just has not been able to capture. Maybe it can, but American animation studios have shown no interest in trying to duplicate that, which I think is a real shame, because that is one of the best things about this latest film, The Wind Rises, from Miyazaki. And it's a strange thing indeed for me to sing the praises of Miyazaki, because I'm not a big fan. I respect his work, for sure. But just like with Stanley Kubrick, as I was discussing in my trailer review for Under the Skin, I tend to like narrative films more than experimental films. And both Miyazaki and Kubrick veer towards the experimental. But that said, this is Miyazaki's strongest narrative to date, and I really appreciated that, and I think it's one of the reasons it's my favorite film of his. Also, though, he still retains his really strong visuals, and that's another great quality about this film. I think it reminds us as moviegoers and animation fans why animation exists. I think that for a long time I used to think, okay, well, you use animation when you can't achieve that, you can't create that world in live action. But as live action special effects get so good, and they can pretty much make anything seem real, I think that the need for animation seems to, become in question, or there's some debate as to when a film should be animated and when it shouldn't. And I think that Miyazaki shows that one of the great reasons that you do go with animation is because it's not just to create a fantasy world, but that you can use artistic styles. It's really, animation exists in the limbo between live action entertainment and fine art that you would see like in a gallery. Like you wouldn't see a live action pointillism film, but animation can utilize that in a really exciting way to tell its story. And Miyazaki does that. It really is, as I said, a storybook come to life or a beautiful painting. And I really appreciated that. The other thing I liked about the film is that it's so strongly rooted in Japan, culturally and historically. And I really felt like I went to Japan for 2 hours. In fact, after the press screening, I went and got sushi for lunch because I just wanted to continue the experience. I didn't want to leave. And that's one of the great things about going to see a foreign film. You feel like you're going to visit their country. And especially here because not only did you see a lot of the culture and the society, the way it interacts, but beautiful landscapes. They really went to a lot of different great places. And so you felt like you were there. The other thing I really appreciated about the movie is that it was fascinating to see or hear Japan, or the Japanese artists at least who made this movie, reflect on their own country with startling honesty, which I really appreciated, although I can see why it would offend some people back home. I mean, obviously, when people are, starkly honest about America, some people here get upset. But this movie, it addressed Japan's strengths, but also, quite frankly, and very frankly, I mean, its weaknesses, which, as I said, I respected and appreciated. So that was a great aspect of the film. I also, it's a little slow. The pace is a little slow. Because I think that's because the film, allows itself to breathe, which is very different from the very fast-paced, Fast and Furious animated films we're used to here in the United States these days, with a lot of jokes coming, fast and heavy. But this film is more of a winding narrative. And at some points I was wondering to myself, what's the point here, Miyazaki? What are you trying to do? And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it after the movie was over. And I really think that Miyazaki is trying to talk about the reality of dreams, and that we dream when we're young and we're kids, and then when we get older and become adults and have the opportunity to make those dreams come true, how they're twisted, and sometimes in horrific ways, by reality. The compromises that we have to make, and just what life is. And I guess that's the theme of the film. The wind is rising. We must try to continue to live. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the quote that they show at the beginning of the movie. And it's true. I mean, you are really a leaf on the wind, and you have to try and do your best to survive and go in as close to the direction that you want. So I think that was a really important lesson that the movie captures quite well. Also, I'm not usually a big fan of dubs. This film is in English though, and I think that's important to get more people to go and see it, so I'm glad for that. And usually I like to see the original performances because I think that even though they're in a foreign language, you want to get the integrity of the original work of art as a film. But here the dubs are very well done and very respectful. Joseph Gordon-Levitt does the lead, Jiro. John Krasinski also does a voice here, and his voice was the one, he and Joseph Gordon-Levitt's were the two voices that I was like, I know who that is. Also Martin Short, but that kind of went away. He did a good job blending. But even though Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Krasinski didn't really blend with the material, like I knew it was them, and with Krasinski I didn't know it was him at first, so it was a little frustrating as I was trying to figure out who it was. I was like, I know that voice, and it took me out of it a little bit. But they still did a good job, very good voice acting, and as I said, very respectful to the material. And I think this needs to be in English to reach a wider audience. So I'm okay with that. And I think it's easier to do a dub with animation because the lip sync is pretty close, so it doesn't really take you out of it. So I really hope that you go and see this film for two reasons. One, as I said, because it shows what animation can do as a medium and an art form, that it is an art form, and I think it's important to remember that, not only for animation fans, but for mainstream moviegoers. But also, as I said, this film has such a strong cultural feeling for Japan, and we're so lucky to be getting more and more foreign films here in mainstream multiplexes. You don't have to go search them out in art house theaters here and there. But this movie will play across the country starting the weekend of the Oscars. It's going in limited release the weekend before, but anyone should be able to go and see it. And people in other countries have been watching our movies for decades, and they're stepping up their game. Their films are now, there have always been examples that are on par with Hollywood, but with more regularity, foreign film markets are pumping out films, or releasing films, I guess, because there's not a factory, there's art here, that are on par with some of the best things that Hollywood has to offer. So I think out of respect and to broaden our own horizons, we really need to check them out. And I hope you'll roll the dice here, and I suspect you won't be disappointed. So that's my review of The Wind Rises. If you've seen the film, write down below your thoughts on it. I know it's been playing in quite a few countries abroad so far, especially in Asia. I'd be very interested to know how people in Japan feel about the film, the BTT viewers who have seen it already. And you can check out some more episodes right now.